Going on YouTube, Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet and Violet video, and today we're going to be talking about 10 underrated Pokemon that you can use right now in regulationI. So these are mons that are relatively niche for the most part, but they have had some results and success on enough teams that you can at least warrant some consideration on your particular squads. So we're coming up on the end of July, right? And that means we're pretty much entering crunch time territory for the World Championships, which is of course in mid-August. And if you're going and still looking to find that one mon on your team that can really separate your team from the others and give you that edge, no matter big or small, then perhaps one of these mons that we're going to look at today might be the one that you need to be looking for or need to be exploring, right? So as we go through these, right, they're going to be in no particular order, of course. And after we briefly spotlighted them, what we'll also do is take a look at some teams where you can actually use these mons. So this way you have some kind of starting point that you can consider if you want to give any of these mons a try. All right. Anyway, so without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. But first, a little bit of news that we made on the channel last night. All right, so I posted this late last night as a community post on our channel. I also posted this in our Discord and also on Twitter, but we are officially part of the Razer Creator program. Yes. After these last few years of growing the VGC channel, now we're able to be a part of something more here. So we thank you all so much for supporting the channel these last couple of years or so. It means a lot to us, right? I just remember starting the channel from zero during peak COVID days, and now fast forward here to 2025. Now we're out here getting partnerships and affiliates, with these brands. So it's actually really cool, all right? But yeah, if you do want to upgrade, on some computer peripherals, and if you're interested in Razer products in general, feel free to use our affiliate link, which I linked here, and I'll just go ahead and link it. By the way, this will always be in our video description below in every single video, so feel free to use it if you're interested in Razer products in general. It's just further support for us and the channel, so we very much appreciate it if you do use our link. But of course, it's not always necessary, right? But anyway, what's really cool here is that they actually have a Pokemon line over here. So if that's something that you're interested, you can definitely explore that and explore their other products in general. But for us, we actually have a Razer keyboard ourselves, but it's from like 2010. So that's a long time. So I think we might need a little bit of an upgrade now. So we'll definitely do that. But anyway, we thank you all for watching the channel and getting it to where it is right now, where we can get stuff like this. All right. But yeah, anyway, let's just go back and to talking about mons, because we got teams to build. So the first mon that I actually want to take a look at here is actually Blood Moon Ursaluna. So you know how strong physical Ursaluna is right now. Combos relatively well with Lunala because of wide guard earthquake combos. It's great on Miraidon teams in general with Lunala, just because it's pretty good into the mirror matchup. But Blood Moon Ursaluna can kind of serve a similar role, but there are some obvious differences, right? Of course, you still have that ground normal typing. So again, really good against stuff like Iron Hands, Raging Bolt, Miraidon teams. And of course, because you have that normal typing, just like physical Ursaluna, that makes you immune to ghost type attacks. So now start thinking about Calyrex Shadow Rider. You're pretty much immune to the Astral Barrage, right? And that's all fine and dandy. So why isn't anyone using this Ursaluna as much as the physical one? So first of all, take a look at the speed tier. Speed of 52. Okay, that makes a difference when you consider the base 50s that are running around in the meta. So first of all, I'll put the physical Ursaluna on the board. Then I'll also put Calyrex Ice Rider. And then I'll even put Iron Hands here. And these are the three common base 50 mons that you're looking at right now. So what's wrong with Blood Moon Ursaluna versus these three? Well, if you have Trick Room up, or if the opponent has Trick Room up, and all of these are, negative speed nature, whether it be Brave, and then that means if you're quiet, they're always going to outspeed you in Trick Room here. And that's a problem, right? Because again, Ursaluna is also weak to Ice, so that means Calyrex can just go for Glacial Lance, and then Iron Hands, it's a fighting type. And even though you do put pressure on it with your ground type attacks, if the Iron Hands gets to go first with something like, Drain Punch or Low Kick, that's not good for you either, because you are weak to fighting types as well there. So not as great of a niche as this Ursaluna, and of course Facade is just broken, right? And Earthquake is a good solid spread move because again, you get to hit multiple targets here. You do have Hyper Voice though, all right, and you are able to hit ghost types, so you can hit a Calyrex Shadow Rider with that, which is something that physical Ursaluna cannot do. And of course, you also have Blood Moon that can do the same thing, right? Oh, I can't type here. This is why we need a new keyboard upgrade, right? And then you also have to consider the single target Earth Power, which is again relatively strong. You know, usually you'll have something like a Life Orb here, and this is a very, very standard Ursaluna set, right? And again, it's pretty good. But again, that speed tier is a bit of a problem when you consider how common, you know, the Iron Hands, the Calyrex, and the Ursalunas are. But again, you do have the advantage that you can hit normal types, ghost types with your normal type attacks. And also, because you are a special attacker, you are not prone to intimidate cycling from something like an Incineroar. So there's some positives that you can do with Ursaluna here. And you can fit it on some similar teams, right? You know, again, Trick Room is going to be a nice, useful idea with Ursaluna, whether it be the blood or the physical one, and just some ideas that you can just even consider as a core. You can always do something like this with Farigiraf, and you can even just add Miraidon to this piece, right? And even to an extent, Iron Hands, but you can definitely capitalize on these cores, and then from here, you know, just use it as your ground type that you want for the mirror matchup. Sometimes these Miraidon teams also feature Landers, right? And again, Ursaluna is fulfilling that ground type role on that team, that special attacking ground type. And most times, you know, people are just going to say, well, why not just use Landers? They are, right? Because again, it's faster, and of course, Sheer Force is busted. Okay, so you might as well just use that. And if you really wanted a Trick Room option on your team that can also do relatively well, again, you'll just add the Iron Hands to your Miraidon team, and you'll often see these four on a pretty common regulationI team right now here. So, but again, Blood Moon Ursaluna can still get the job done if you position it properly, right? Because again, that ground normal typing is very, very good. It puts pressure on a lot of different common meta threats, but you just have to be aware of that speed tier that can hold it back a little bit. And of course, there are other faster options like the Landers that I just showed you there. So more people were inclined to just play that, but you can still make use of the Blood Moon here. Most common example of the Blood Moon Ursaluna being used, look no further than this past weekend, where Frederick Nielsen was able to win VR, you know, having a Blood Moon Ursaluna on his Miraidon team here. So if we just preview this a little bit, take a look at this team, right? So like we said, Miraidon and Farigiraf and the Blood Moon here, they form that very solid, consistent core that we've known for like the last, I would say, half a year or so. Then you add something like Zamazenta here, again, for your wide guard support. And then these other two Pokemon, by the way, a little bit of a spoiler, they're also on our list. Okay, so Frederick Nielsen, if anything, is actually using 3 pretty cool niche mons, and he's able to win a whole VR tournament with that. So again, like I said, if they're on the right team, and if you position them properly, they can do a whole lot for you, especially because not a lot of people are using these mons, and they're not really prepared to handle them because their usage just isn't so high right now. But here we are with the Silk Scarf Ursaluna, right? That's because the Life Orb is on the Miraidon, so that means you get access to Protect. But it's pretty much the same set. Blood Moon, Hyper Voice, Earth Power, Protect with that Terra Normal for boosted damage. Like, just imagine the Silk Scarf, Terra Normal, Blood Moon, or Hyper Voice. Like, what is living this? You know, not a whole lot. You would have to resist it, if anything, because I can't imagine some mons with, you know, just normal resistance would be able to survive and lift the tail to tail here, right? So Blood Moon looking really good on this Miraidon team. So shout outs to Nielsen. We'll cover the other two in a later section of the video. Another easy squad that you can even add Ursaluna to is, how about this Hard Trick Room team with Miraidon and Calyrex Ice Rider. This is Raging Devonian's team that he used to get 6-2 in a recent Spear Pillar tournament. So it also works here. Like we said earlier, Miraidon, Farigiraf, and Ursaluna can form that core that we've known for, you know, quite a while now. Now you just add Iron Hands and Amoonguss for a nice solid backbone defensively, and then of course your secondary restricted is this Ice Rider. So you just have to pay attention to your speed tiers here, you know, with Ice Rider and Iron Hands being both base 50, and then Ursaluna of course is a different one in base speed 52, so that's pretty good. But here, you know, if you do make them both brave, you won't know who's going first, so maybe you might want to make one at least 1 point faster than the other, so this way you at least know the interaction whether you're in Trick Room or not. But other than worrying about those speed tier EVs, this is still a pretty solid and a pretty standard hard Trick Room team that you can consider right now. that can make use of the Blood Moon Ursaluna. Otherwise, Nielsen's team is also just relatively good in general. But yeah, I do suggest a Miraidon team of some sort. You don't necessarily have to run the Ice Rider. Again, Zamazenta is also a pretty good partner. If you want to add different supporting options, you can definitely do that. But I think some kind of Trick Room setter with Miraidon is definitely necessary if you really want to take advantage of the Blood Moon Ursaluna. The same way that you would also do that with the physical Ursaluna. There must be some kind of Trick Room setter on your team, whether it be Ice Rider or even Lunala to an extent. But if you're going to use Lunala, then you might as well just use the regular Ursaluna at that point. Next underrated mon on our list is actually Dragonite. So in a non-dual restricted format, think Regulation H, Dragonite had a much larger role to play in the meta, but these days when there's two restricteds running around, it's primarily this Choice Band, Terra Normal, Extreme Speed bot, as they always like to say. So it combos relatively well with Chien-Pao, where regardless of speed control, whether it be Trick Room or Tailwind, you're just able to, pretty much bypass all of that and just go for these hard-hitting extreme speeds. Now, of course, with Terra Normal, two sides of the coin here. Yes, it makes you immune to Astral Barrage from a Caloric Shadow Rider, but also on the flip side, you can't actually hit it with extreme speed because, again, normal types can't hit that ghost type unless you are the Blood Moon Ursaluna, of course, right? But besides that, at the very least, Dragonite can do a ton of damage on a lot of different Pokemon and just immediately remove some threats off the board with the priority extreme speed. And then now you're adding Chien-Pao, one of its best partners, so you're just doing a little bit more extra damage. And then you just also have moves like Outrage and even Aerial Ace, some of its stab moves that can do really, really big damage and put on a lot of pressure, on your opponent. And then, of course, with Inner Focus, that means you're immune to Incinerate or Intimidate. You can't flinch it with Fake Out. So that's very useful, right? When you can bypass those two things that are relatively common from the #1 used Pokemon in the meta right now. But besides that, there have been other cases where you can use Dragonite, but it isn't necessarily a Choice Band Extreme Speed bot. There have been some teams that have also been able to capitalize on this set with Loaded Dice Scale Shot, which was Dragonite's moveset back in Regulation H, but it also has access to Tailwind, right? And some people forget about that. And now what you can also do is if you also go for its multi-scalability, right? Now you can take that one big hit, lift the tail, and potentially get off this Tailwind. And even with Scale Shot, just think about like these multi-target moves right now in the format. They can break Sash. And not only that, if you're using this against something like a Lunala, for example, you can hit it first with that Scale Shot, break it, Shadow Shield, get a couple more off, of course. But the point is you can break Shadow Shield, and then the Pokemon that moves after Dragonite can potentially just KO it immediately once you just get that little bit of chip damage on it, where that Shadow Shield ability is nullified here. So I think both sets are relatively good. But of course, again, Dragonite being a relatively niche option on your team. But if you're going to use it with Chien-Pao, then that means Zamazenta is another easy partner to add to this, right? Just because of how well it also functions with Chien-Pao. And if you're going to use Zamazenta, what's the other restricted pair that can also do well with Zamazenta? Of course, that strong ghost type with that strong fighting type, and that is a Caloric Shadow Rider. And you can definitely build a Regulation I team just based off of these four. And then these last two slots can be whatever you want it to be, depending on what your team needs. But at the very least, Dragonite can definitely function with this restricted pairing, and we can show you a couple of squads where it has been able to do that. So let's take a look at that. Now, if you look at that same Victory Road tournament that we saw Nielsen's team, if you go a little bit further down, you can see actually a Dragonite team on here. Right here, 6'4" from Christian Contreras. It is again a Caloric Shadow Rider, Zamazenta, Chien-Pao, D-Knight core, and it's Extreme Speed, Outrage, and Aerial Ace. Right, with Terra Normal, and your last move of choice is actually Low Kick here, which is again a very, very solid Choice Band D-Knight set here. And then after that, look at this. You've got Ruination Chien-Pao, Icy Wind Taunt. Oh, very, very niche Chien-Pao set here. This is pretty cool. And then your last two slots here, like we said, these are up for grabs. Cornerstone Ogerpon makes sense, of course, with Sturdy. Again, also can hit relatively hard with Chien-Pao. Very good against Volcarona. And then the Ting-Lu here, which you might think has a little bit of anti-synergy with Calyrex, but it has also comboed well with Zamazenta in the past, especially with D-Knight and Chien-Pao over here. Again, Sand Tomb just, trapping things and going for that big chip damage, and then Lash Out, Stomping Tantrum. These are just your 2 stat moves here. So D-Knight can definitely function on a team like this. So this is pretty cool. Then another team, right? From Razer, this was a Talonflight Club tournament, 6-3 result here as well. Another kind of core, but again, still the same 4, right? You're having Aqua Jet and Breaking Swipe and Stomping Tantrum along with E-Speed, so different set, but again, it can still work. Breaking Swipe is pretty interesting too, right? Because again, physical damage mitigation, Cornerstone Ogerpon comes yet again, and then we have Raging Bolt here. So doubled Dragon Core here. But Bolt, Chen-Pao, Zamazenta, Calyrex, Shadow Rider has always been a very, very standard core here. Now you're just adding Ogerpon Cornerstone again, and then how about Dragonite functioning on something like this? So this is pretty cool. Then I saw this team on Twitter here from Muscataloon, I want to say. And it features Miraidon and Zamazenta here, and again, we were able to access the Pace. Thank you, VGC Pace, for posting that. It's actually a Life Orb Dragonite set here with Chen-Pao. Again, still featuring the patented duo, along with Zamazenta, right? But now we have a different restricted of choice. It is Miraidon here, which again is also a good choice, you know, besides the Calyrex Shadow Rider that you can always add here. And then Whimsicott and Incineroar round out this team. So this is pretty cool if you want to run Dragonite with something like this. Again, double Dragon Core, just like Raging Bolt, a Dragon Electric idea. Again, you still have that here with Miraidon. Then this is a team that got top 100 on ladder from this past month here. This also features Loaded Dice Cinccino, but again, Miraidon, Zamazenta, Chen-Pao, Dragonite. Again, that same familiar 4-man core, a lot, just like Shadow Rider. But again, it's Extreme Speed, Aerial Ace, Low Kick. How about Facade as the 4th move of choice here? So at least this way, you know, if you're going to get burned, you might as well do some big damage while you're at it. Pretty interesting when you think about it. If you're trying to, you know, want to accept that Will-O-Wisp. And then Whimsicott, of course, just gives you another form of speed control with Tailwind and Endeavor. So that's pretty cool. Then again, how about this one with Weezing? But again, same 4-man core that we've been talking about. Here's that Loaded Dice Skill Shot set here that we've been discussing along with the alternate Choice Band set. But it also features Extreme Speed, which you can definitely use. And then how about Encore as this last move over here? But multi-skill makes it so that you can take that big hit just like almost like a Lunala to an extent, right? And then Urshifu, Chen-Pao has always just been relatively solid. And then this last one here, okay, how about Zacian, Calyrex? I think we saw this at NAIC. Scale Shot, Encore, Tailwind, no Extreme Speed on this one, but it is still multi-skill. No Chen-Pao here either, right? But again, it's still okay because you have a Tailwind user that can help your Shadow Rider and Zacian be super aggressive and super fast in potential mirror matchups. And then after that, it's just a bunch of other hard hitters like Urshifu and Landorus, and then Incineroar can kind of just round out and add some stability to the squad here with some Intimidate, Fake Out Pressure, and Parting Shot for positioning purposes. So lots of cool teams that you can utilize Dragonite, but if you stick to that 4 Pokemon core with D-Knight, Chen-Pao, you know, Miraidon, Zamazenta, or Calyrex, Shadow Rider, Zamazenta, then it's just relatively easy and a decent starting point if you want to use Dragonite Regulation I. Next up is Cresselia here. Now, you wouldn't think Cresselia would even have a spot in Regulation I, just because, you know, with the Psychic typing being weak to Dark and Ghost type attacks, with Calyrex, Shadow Rider clicking Astro Barrage, and with so much Dark types like Chen-Pao and Chi running around, you might find it hard for Cresselia to even have any kind of influence in Regulation I. However, that being said, it can actually do quite a couple of things here. Now, the secret lies in its bulk and also its ability with Levitate here. So, traditionally, what can Cresselia do? You know it can set Trick Room, right? And if you look at its base stats here, 120 HP, 110 defense, 120 special defense, very, very good bulk. And if you didn't even account for the Ghost/Dark weaknesses, Cresselia is actually very, very bulky and hard to remove there. And then compounded with the fact that you have healing with Lunar Blessing, now all of a sudden, you know, you can heal yourself and your partner Pokemon, and this has always traditionally been pretty good with Ursaluna in its Scarlet and Violet run here. So Cresselia, Ursaluna, almost a match made in heaven here, because again with Ursaluna you can click Earthquake next to your own Cresselia, and then of course you're not going to hit your own Cresselia because of the Levitate, and then you can click Lunar Blessing and heal Ursaluna, which is pretty important because again you're taking a bunch of chip damage over time with the Flame Orb, And by being able to heal Ursaluna, you're able to keep it alive, so that way it can continue to do the job that it needs to do here, right? And this is still the same in Regulation I, right? So that being said, if you had to add some restricted pairs, you know, with these two, right? Right away, Miraidon comes into play, as well as something like Lunala, because again, with Lunala and Ursaluna, you know, you still have the Wide Guard Trick Room stuff, and you can always support Cresselia with Wide Guard as well if you have to. That being said, you are doubling up on the Psychic typing, which means you're doubling up on the Ghost and Dark weaknesses, but it can still work relatively decently because, again, you have access to Terrestrialization. And then also, why Miraidon here? Well, again, with Miraidon being weak to ground type attacks from something like another Ursaluna or maybe a Landorus, or even Blood Moon Ursaluna, like we mentioned earlier, you can actually pivot the Miraidon into Cresselia, which won't get hit by a ground type attack in general because of Levitate here. And what's funny with Cresselia, you know, just on the side here, if this is Terra Fire, which we've seen in the past, something like a Calyrex Ice Rider can't really hit this all that well because, again, besides the Leech Seed, you only have 2 attacks there, mostly Glacial Lance and High Horsepower. And with Terra Fire, you resist the Glacial Lance, and you can't even take damage from High Horsepower because of the Levitate. So, in fact, Cresselia, you can just spam one attack like something like, you know, Moonblast, and then you can just slowly chip away at the Ice Rider and just occasionally heal yourself, you know, with Lunar Blessing, and then you can win that one-on-one endgame, believe it or not. Now, if it is the Leech Seed set, then obviously, you know, different kind of story, but at the very least, you have some way to wall out the Ice Rider if you have to. Now, that being said, I think other Terras are just a little bit better than Terra Fire here. But, you know, if you really had to make use of Cresselia, there's also other ways just besides being a bulky Trick Room setter that can heal. You also get some pretty cool support moves like Icy Wind and Thunder Wave. And that's also what other people have done in the past with this Cresselia set. You know, so a bulky form of speed control, whether it be any of these, right? Which is pretty cool when you think about it. Because, again, with that Psychic weakness, Psychic typing, you are still very much weak to the Astral Barrage and the Dark types, like we said, but comboing this with Ursaluna, Miraidon, and even if you had these restrictors, then there's probably a team with Zamazenta on there as well. So you could even just imagine this kind of core: Cresselia, Ursaluna, Miraidon, Zamazenta, and then from here you can kind of build out the rest of the squad depending on how you want to support this core. But this still works because, again, you got 2 ground weaknesses, you have a couple of fighting weaknesses as well, and Cresselia is great pivots into either of those options here. So if we take a look at some of these squads here that have been able to utilize Cresselia, this one right here, right? We kind of just called it right here. So this was from Japan Nats, top 16. Here we go, Miraidon, Zamazenta, and Cresselia, and Ursaluna, right? So look at this: Moonblast, Lunar Blessing, Trick Room, Helping Hand, very standard set. Electric Seed is interesting. Again, you do have Levitate, but if you Terra Fairy, again, you can totally take advantage of the Seed here, get that nice solid defense boost. Then after that, you already know what Chenpao, Zamazenta are doing here with Miraidon. Volcarona, of course, has been, you know, continuing to rise in Regulation I as we head closer and closer into Worlds. It's just such a good, you know, Pokemon right now with its typing and being able to wall out Zamazenta stuff. And then, like we said, Ursaluna here, being able to Earthquake next to your own Cresselia under Trick Room is really, really good. And then also some decent synergy with Zamazenta because, again, Wide Guard with Earthquake also makes a lot of sense. So this is actually pretty cool when you kind of think about it here. Another cool team here is almost the same kind of 6, but this actually involves Iron Hands instead of the Ursaluna here. And again, if you are afraid of that Astral Barrage, again, Zamazenta is here to click Wide Guard. Same over here with the Japan Nats top 16 squad here. So again, very similar idea, but you do have the Iron Hands in this case. So, but look at the set now, right? It's not even Trick Room. It's Icy Wind, Thunder Wave, Lunar Blessing, and Moonblast instead, right? So it's somewhat of a speed control bot, you know, with the occasional chip damage of Moonblast, which is still pretty cool. Lunar Blessing, again, pretty decent healing, you know, all around. It can keep your Volcarona alive for the endgame win condition if you have to start spamming these Quiver Dances. So again, another use of Cresselia if you want to utilize it that way. This one was a pretty high-ranking ladder team. And this one right here, again, similar core, but instead of Miraidon, you've got Cress, Ursaluna, Zamazenta, and with Lunala in this case, right? So Zamazenta is the Wide Guard user rather than the Lunala. And like I said earlier, you are somewhat doubling up on your Psychic typing, right? but at the very least, look at the Terra options here. Terra Electric or Cresselia with Levitate means you don't have any weaknesses now, similar to how Rotom, with Levitate and its electric typing also didn't have any weaknesses. But after that, you've got Roaring Moon here for that dark type that you really want against something like a Calyrex Shadow Rider. And then how about Clefable here as an unaware option on this type of squad here. So that's pretty cool. And then this one right here, another Miraidon squad with Ursaluna and Cresselia featured as the core. Then you have Iron Hands again. So again, a couple of base 50s that you have to worry about here. This is Brave, this is Adamant. That's usually the way to go about it. And then how about Sneasler, which is again another one of those underrated mons, like we said in the beginning of the video, from Nielsen's team, that is also a little bit slept on when you're considering Miraidon partners here. And then Calyrex Shadow Rider is another unique partner that you usually don't see a whole lot, but has had some decent success on some, regional teams and even some grassroots tournament teams as of late. So we may have to cover that in a future video this week, but stay tuned for that. But anyway, so you can kind of see the ideas with Cresselia here. Look at this one. It's Lunar Blessing helping out Trick Room with the stab move here. In this case, it's Psychic over Moonblast, which is still okay. And again, it's Electric Seed here with the option of Terra Fairy here. So pretty cool ideas that you have with Cresselia. So even though it does have some pretty big weaknesses, that typing with Levitate and Trick Room and being able to support Ursaluna as like another restricted is pretty cool. Walking Wake is definitely one of our more favorite underrated mons right now in Reg I, just because of some of the tools that you can have with Walking Wake, and it's actually also relatively versatile with the item that you want to put on it, which changes the function on the team here. Now, of course, Walking Wake, just like Raging Bolt, they both have photosynthesis, so they're both going to do relatively well in the sun, or they both can make good use out of the booster energy. But Walking Wake doesn't nearly get as much usage as Raging Bolt here, because again, with Raging Bolt, you are slower than Walking Wake, which in this case could be a good thing, because again, you're going to be a pretty decent Trick Room threat. You also have Priority Thunderclap, which is strong against stuff like Urshifu and Kyogres and some of the Terra Water Calyrexes that are running around as well. Speaking of Calyrex Ice Rider, it combos well with Calyrex Ice Rider, giving you that Bolt Beam coverage that is, often desirable on your squad. And then, of course, Electric Dragon typing, simulates Miraidon, even though you're not nearly the same Pokemon as Miraidon, but you are still a special attacker that can still dish out pretty good damage here. Walking Wake, kind of functions a little bit differently than Raging Bolt here. So, of course, you're still getting Draco Meteor the same way that you would get, on Raging Bolt here. But you also still have access to Hydro Steam here. And, this is both a water and a fire benefiting kind of attack. Oh, I kind of fumbled it there a little bit, but of course you're going to get a water stab here, Hydro Steam, and then in the rain does more damage, but it can also do well in the sun, which is why you always want to, not necessarily always, but you want to put this onto a Koraidon type of team or even a Groudon type of team, so this way you can really take advantage of photosynthesis here. But also, it does get access to Snarl, which is a great damage mitigation move right now. Technically, Raging Bolt also gets that as well, which is also why it gets more usage, because a lot of things that Walking Wake can do, Raging Bolt can also do, and do it just a little bit better because of its typing and its stats. But other than that, still, Walking Wake can, dish out some pretty good damage. 125 special attack is pretty solid. The speed makes a big difference here, because now you can outspeed threats like Chi-Yu, and then you can also outspeed another Miraidon for that matter. So this way, if they are the specs or the AV variants, you can go first, because again, with photosynthesis, if you're a timid variant, you get to outspeed it, and then just hit it hard with that big Draco Meteor drop on it, right? So you can always utilize it like that, but primarily it's just going to function as a special attacking nuker on your team that can occasionally play the support role with Snarl. So yeah, not too bad. But again, I do like this Water Dragon typing, which is pretty good into Kyogre as well, and can do well even against Urshifu as far as like a resistance is concerned. So you have that going for you. But some of these teams that I'm going to show you, of course, they're going to be on some Sun teams. So take a look at this one. This is a very, very high ladder placement team with Koraidon and Calyrex Ice Rider. Of course, you are double dipping on your Dragon typing, but that's still okay because you can do the same thing with Raging Bolt here. How about this set here? Covert Cloak with Hydro Steam, Draco Meteor, Snarl. How about Weather Ball here? So now You have another attack that you can play both sides, whether it's like Rain or Sun. And then from here, Indeedee Executor, you already know what you're getting there with Chlorophyll and the Expanding Force shenanigans with Indeedee. So that's a pretty cool team. Same kind of ladder seeding. Again, another strong ladder team. I think this was Itachi VGC's team here with Groudon and Zamazenta. So with Walking Wake here, you have Booster Energy with Terra Normal. That's pretty cool. So now you have some pretty good immunity against Astro Barrage. And speaking of being up against the Shadow Rider, you have Snarl in your team on your moveset. Hydro Steam and Dragon Pulse are the other moves, of course. And then you just add Chio and Flutter Mane here to further get enabled by the Groudon Sun here. And then Zamazenta with Wide Guard is just really good against the Ice Rider matchup because, again, protection from Glacial Lance. This one here, again, another similar concept with Groudon, and the Sun here with Jump Fluff being the Chlorophyll user instead of something like Executor. Raging Bolt here with Iron Ball, pretty interesting. But you also have Walking Wake here with choice specs now that can really dish out a lot of damage now. So you have Hydro Steam, Draco Meteor, Flamethrower, and Dragon Pulse. Again, another strong ladder placement team, 34th overall from this past month here. And then this one right here, both Koraidon and Shadow Rider. Again, the strong fighting type with the Ghost Partner. There's Walking Wake with the Life Orb. So pretty standard, timid-natured, nuking Walking Wake with Hydro Steam, Draco Meteor as your two stabs. And then Weather Ball, of course, that can play within Koraidon and even with Kyogre kind of matchups. Then over here, Harold Coup. Again, similar concept with Galarian Weezing that you can also play Walking Wake in. Assault Vest, so now you can play this relatively bulky with the Snarl set and Aqua Jet as your other two moves here. Galarian Weezing with the Ability Shield Koraidon also makes sense with Calyrex Shadow Rider. So pretty cool squad here. And then finally another one, we can't forget Zhang's team, which of course uses a similar concept, again with the Galarian Weezing, Koraidon, and Calyrex Shadow idea. And this is the AV Walking Wake set that we just kind of showed you here. But this one, at the very least, they made their EV spreads public, so you can definitely give this one a go if you want. But again, Walking Wake, definitely very underrated. It's fast, it can hit hard, but you can also play it bulky with a support with AV and Snarl. Technically, Raging Bolt can do both of those roles, which is why, again, it gets more usage, but Walking Wake still has its uses. All right, so now finally we get to Spotlight Sneasler here. So once upon a time in Regulation H, this was the top tier meta threat here. This controlled everything, okay? Because Dire Claw was just a busted, annoying move that it could just take advantage of. All it takes is just one Dire Claw, and you get the 3-turn sleep, and your opponent doesn't really get to play the game because of that. Now, you can't really do that as much this time around because of, Miraidon, but that doesn't stop you from still clicking Dire Claw and getting some of the other effects here, right? Including Poison and Paralysis. So that is still on the table. And then when you combo these two together, and then you have Electric Seed and then the Unburden ability, now all of a sudden, Sneasler is the fastest threat in the meta right now. It's not even Calyrex Shadow Rider anymore. And you don't even need Tailwind, right? Because your speed is doubled when you can proc the Electric Seed in the Miraidon terrain here. Now, as far as what else it can do, again, look at its attacking stat. Base 130, super, super strong. Base 120 speed. You don't even have to invest all of your EVs into your speed stat. You can invest some, just for a little bit, without the terrain. So, for example, you can even just do something like this. Actually, you can just even max it just to outspeed something like Landorus and whatnot. But you don't have to always fully invest here if you're planning to take advantage of the Electric Seed, with Miraidon terrain here. But again, look at its coverage. Fighting Poison, that hits a lot of the meta right now, especially when you have something like Close Combat. You can smash all the Incineroars, you can smash all the Ursalunas. Dire Claw removes Rillaboom stuff, and then even some of the Ogerpons as well. And you can even consider Terra Dark with Knockoff, which is what some of these Sneaslers are using on these Miraidon teams. Wait, not Knockoff, I'm sorry. Throat Chop, right? So now all of a sudden you're creating pins against the Calyrex Shadow Rider and the Lunala teams. So that's also something to be aware of. And then, of course, you're just a fast fake out user. So again, think about Incineroar, Rillabooms, and now even Sneasler's in the discussion. Now all of a sudden Sneasler is the fastest fake out user. And this is pretty useful against something like the Paint Dog, right? Because again, the Paint Dog was like the fastest fake out user over the Rillaboom and Incineroar, but now all of a sudden Sneasler says, nuh-uh, I am the faster fake out user. In addition to that, you also get access to coaching if you want to go that direction. Remember how you used to do like coaching plays into like a Dragonite in Regulation H? You can do that here if you have a Calyrex Ice Rider on your team. So sometimes you'll see like Miraidon Ice Rider combo well with Sneasler, and then this Sneasler can just go for coaching, you know, onto this Calyrex Ice Rider, and it's a fast coaching set. So you can, you know, just take advantage immediately, go for these +1 Glacial Lances. So all in all, there's a niche for Sneasler right now on these Miraidon teams. It just depends on what else you want to surround it with. But again, it's a pretty clear offensive threat that can outspeed everything thanks to Electric Seed on Burden with Miraidon. And then again, like we said, fast fake out user, fast coaching user, and the occasional Dire Claws are still going to be really, really strong, even though you can't sleep anymore. The status inflation is still very, very good. And even if you don't want to have Dire Claw, you can always go for the harder hitting Gunk Shot, which again, base 120 power, even though it does have a lower accuracy, is still very, very strong, especially against like Terra Fairy options, if you can force that out too, right? So if you look at some teams, like again, Nielsen was using that. We'll spotlight his team one more time, but there was also another Miraidon Sneasler team here, and that was right here from William Basculegion. So we'll look at both squads here, but again, just looking at Nielsen's squad, again, look at this Electric Seed on Burn and Terra Dark with the Throat Chop, and then Fake Out, Close Combat, Gunk Shot, again, you know, opting for the higher base power. Again, pretty standard, pretty self-explanatory why they would do that. Again, this is the same team that we talked about earlier with the Blood Moon Ursaluna. But again, yeah, this is the one niche where Sneasler can do relatively well as like a very clear, physical, fast offensive threat here. Then if you look at Williams' team, okay, this one, again, similar idea. Again, Gunk Shot, Close Combat, Fake Out, Throat Chop with Miraidon and Zamazenta, the same way that Nielsen was doing it. Then you have Chenpao and Ferrograph here, which is really good. So this way, Mirror Herb, which is actually kind of funny when you think about it with all those boosts that you can copy. And then you can even just Roar, you know, with Miraidon over here. So you can nuke something with Draco Meteor, Roar yourself out, get a free switch, maybe into something like Sneasler next turn, maybe even something like Zamazenta. But again, you know, very clear niche for Sneasler over here. Now, this one is a pretty strong ladder team as well. That can do well in the tournament level. Destroyed Sneasler idea, like we said earlier. Look at this, Miraidon, Calyrex Ice Rider. Again, Focus Sash on Burden, right? Which is, again, still pretty good. Coaching is the main idea here, where you can coach your Ice Rider, like we said earlier. You can even coach your Ursaluna if you want to do it like that. Volcarona Endgame Win Con, and then Grimmsnarl Screens. This is actually a pretty cool team. I actually want to use this. If they have the rental, I would love to use it. So hopefully, we'll probably try and reach out. Let's see if they're willing to loan it to us. And then over here, Swamp, again, pretty high and strong ladder team here. But again, similar concept. But again, Grimmsnarl, Calyrex Ice Rider, Miraidon, Ferrograph, same idea. Sneasler with the Electric Seed, but it's not coaching. Instead, again, it's just Fake Out, Dire Claw, Close Combat, and Throat Chop with the Terra Dark idea. Here, you can even have access to their EVs, right? So this is also pretty good. How about Blake, right? Kaguya Falls. Look at this set here with Sneasler. Same thing, Fake Out, Dire Claw, Close Combat, Toxic Spikes for the chip damage here. This is Miraidonization, by the way, with Chenpao. So that's another pretty cool idea that you can do with Sneasler. But again, it's just always this Electric Seed, Focus Sash idea that you can use, you know, just to be able to proc the Unburden idea. So will Sneasler make a play at Worlds? One could only hope and imagine. We'll see. It'd be pretty cool if it did. So Basculegion is the next one on our list here. And anytime we are talking about like a water type cleaner in the format, the first one that always comes to mind is Urshifu. But other than Urshifu, there's not really a whole lot of water type damage dealers here. So Basculegion is at the very least a nice little breath of fresh air. This thing was also a pretty dominant force back in Regulation H when you used to have those Pelipper teams that often featured Arkeladon, and this was the main niche there for Basculegion. Now, we have a similar idea where we wanted to dominate in the rain, right, because of Swift Swim, but this time it's going to be Kyogre bringing the rain as opposed to a Pelipper. So the moveset doesn't really change, and Basculegion's role doesn't really change either, right? It's going to be a Life Orb user most times with Last Respects, so this way it could come in the end and start dealing a whole bunch of damage because again, by that point, your party members have fainted. You still have Aqua Jet for priority, right? And in the rain, it's going to do a lot of damage. Then you have the hard-hitting Wave Crash, which again, in the rain means you're going to outspeed everything and hit it for very, very big damage. And then, of course, after that, it's just Protect You. So what's really cool with Last Respects, again, it's a ghost type attack. It's a physical one. So you can pressure the Calyrex Shadow Riders that way because you can outspeed them. And then Wave Crash in general, strong, solid stat move into a lot of the format right now. And you might even consider either Terra Ghost, Terra Water, or even Terra Grass here, just so that you can avoid the Grassy Glides from Rillaboom or the Thunderclaps from the Raging Bolt. Will not necessarily avoid, but at least take it, soak it up, live to tell the tale, and then KO them right back with one of your big moves here. And there is a Rising Archetype right now with Basculegion and Kyogre, and that's usually involving the Calyrex Ice Rider, and even to an extent not the Sneasel, the Smeargle. Okay, because again, you have Decorate plays along with Fake Out Pressure. Okay, and then you have Follow Me, and this last move is usually Spore, right? So you can put things to sleep, render them useless, and then have all of these cleaners come in and start picking off here, right? So if we take a look at some of these squads, right? So they're very familiar if you've been playing ladder as of late, or if you've been keeping up with the meta. Remember this squad here with Ogre, Calyrex, and Smeargle. Iron Jugulus has been also taking center stage as of late as well because of this kind of team where you're able to click Tailwind, then have 100% accurate Hurricanes, Snarl support. That dark coverage is going to be very useful. And like we said earlier, the Basculegion is the fast mode on this team that can really put pressure in the early game, or it can also be a late game cleaner. So that means you can lead these guys and put on the pressure while playing towards a end game with Basculegion. Similar idea here, right? Again, with Smeargle, Calyrex, and Kyogre, where you have the Tornadus still giving you speed control as opposed to the Jugulus. And then this one, you have the Defiant Ogerpon, which is, again, still pretty useful because the Calyrex and the Basculegion are relatively vulnerable to the Intimidate from the Incineroar. But if you can take advantage, now all of a sudden the Ogerpon becomes the big sweeper, especially with 252 speed over there. Then over here from Singapore Master Ball League, again, similar concept still. Again, very familiar teams. They're just, interchanging one or two slots here. But again, the role of Basculegion doesn't really change, where you still have the same move set, the same item mostly, and then you're just fulfilling that role as a dominant physical late game cleaner in the rain, where you can outspeed everything, including the Shadow Rider, like we said earlier. Even the Scarf Miraidons, you can beat them, right? Just because you are faster than them. So that's pretty cool. And hopefully we'll see this team rise even more, or at least this archetype with Calyrex, Ice Rider, and Kyogre, because it's been doing relatively well. Smeargle is a very annoying Pokemon right now, and then you have already enough to deal with, and now all of a sudden you have to worry about the Basculegion endgame, where it just picks you off left and right there. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Next underrated mod is the Ogerpon-Wellspring variant. So not nearly used as much as the Heart Flame variant or the Cornerstone variant, right? Because Sturdy is such a good ability, and of course Heart Flame just does a lot more damage. But still, Ogerpon-Wellspring does have its niches, right? So first of all, Water Absorb is the key idea here, right? So with Water Absorb, you have pretty good check to not only just Urshifu Rapid Strike, being able to soak up those Surging Strikes, but also into the Kyogre teams that are running around now, especially with the Calyrex Ice Rider. Ogerpon-Wellspring against those rising Kyogre Ice Rider teams can actually do relatively well because, again, with its terrestrialization, you can sit in front of the Ogre and the Wellspring and just soak up those Water Spouts and soak up those Glacial Lances, and then put pressure immediately right back with your Ivy Cudgel, and also the Horn Leech pressures the Ogre, right? You can hit it and then get all your health back. And that's the one thing that Ogerpon-Wellspring can do that the others two cannot, is that you can heal yourself and stay on the field for a little bit longer. But also you can, not only can you do that, but you have Follow Me support where you can redirect and ideally set up your partner if it wants to go for a setup play. So imagine something like Calyrex, Ice Rider, where it wants to try and set up Trick Room. You can definitely use Ogerpon-Wellspring for that. And then you can round out this Fire Water Grass Core very easily when you have something like Incineroar, very common partner with Calyrex, especially setup partners in general, because now you can just go Fake Out and Trick Room, or you can have redirection support and set up Trick Room that way. Otherwise, you also have something like Taunt, right? You have Taunt on some of these Ogerpons that they like to run, because again, relatively fast Taunt user, and it's non-Prankster either, so that's going to be really nice against, you know, Psychic Terrain / Choreograph stuff. And then you also have Knockoff, which you can always use to pressure the Shadow Riders, but also use it as a way to remove key items from your opponent. So Ogerpon can also serve as, you know, a little bit more of a supportive role. And then if you do Terra and go for the Ivy Culture, now you're also that offensive threat. And the grass typing is also pretty cool as well, because again, you can get around stuff like Spore, right? And the Rage Powder shenanigans. So Ogerpon, relatively useful there. Now, the other Ogerpons can do that too. But again, like we said, the water absorbability, just being able to soak in front of the Ogres and the Urshifus is what really separates it from the others there. That being said, you know, when you do Terra it, you are only Terra Water now, so you are still weak to Rillabooms and the Raging Bolts there, two very, very common Pokemon in the format, both in the top 6, of course, so you have to watch out there. But at the very least, you know, if you do get this nice special defense boost, you can actually sit in front of some of these special attackers like a Shadow Rider and be able to take those hits and deal big damage right back. But again, being weak to Rillaboom, Raging Bolt, and also Miraidon kind of sets it a little bit back from the other Ogerpons. But you still have some uses for it. So for example, this team right here from Justin Burns, right, NAIC top 10, look at this, right? So this is Calm Mind Lunala. So if you have double fake out pressure here, you have screens, and you have a redirection support coming from the Ogerpon-Wellspring that can come in with your Lunala and try and set it up here. And you still have this Fire Water Grass Core here with Instant and Ogerpon-Wellspring. And because you have Rillaboom here giving you grassy terrain advantage, now you also have a harder hitting Hornleech. Even though Justin didn't have it here, he can still have it, you know, if he wants to take advantage. But of course, Taunt, like we showed you earlier, was a pretty good and valuable move, especially when you can shut down other, you know, imprisoned Wide Guard users, or, you know, just other non-damaging moves that you want to take away. This one here from Pacalabear, very strong ladder team. Okay, look at this one. It's a Groudon Sun team with Calyrex Ice Rider. And here we go. We got Ogerpon-Wellspring again, giving you that Fire Water Grass Core with Chi-Yu. One is a physical attacker, one is a special attacker. But again, more ways to enable the Calyrex Ice Rider going for Trick Room. So this is pretty cool. I like this too with Raging Bolt, pairing well with Groudon here. So again, Raging Bolt giving you Bolt Beam coverage with Calyrex. And then of course, Photosynthesis with Groudon and Life Orb is just going to have it do a lot of damage. You still have the Flutterfish speed control here. And then, of course, like we said, Ogerpon here, a little bit more stability with redirection here. So this is actually a really, really cool team. I like this team from Pacalabear. I want to know if they'll... they actually did make it public. So hopefully we can use this because I really want to feature that. This one right here, top 8 from seniors from Japan Nats. Again, look at this. The Instant Rillaboom core with Ogerpon-Wellspring. Again, how about Encore as another support move there? That's also pretty cool. Again, Hornleech doing more damage with Rillaboom Terrain. Again, let's try and enable the Calyrex Trick Room. So you have that. And then, of course, how about this one from Gabriel Legati's team from NAIC? This is another interesting set here from Ogerpon-Wellspring. I'm just trying to format this a little bit. Yeah, there we go. But, you know, Ivy Cudgel, Hornleech, Follow Me, Spiky Shield. Again, look at this Calyrex going for... Oh, actually, no, it's not. I thought this might be like... Nasty Plot Calyrex. Actually just substitute over here. So okay, you know, still makes some sense here. You're still getting that Fire Water Grass Core with Incineroar here. So all in all, you have some ideas that you can definitely use the Wellspring for, but again, like I said, not nearly used as much as the other two, but still can play a role, especially against those Kyogre and Urshifu dominant teams. Terapagos is another Pokemon that we've covered on the channel before a couple weeks ago when we did our team building video centered around Miraidon and Terapagos, and that is like one of the main roles that you want with your Sinistcha over here. So again, the secret lies in its speed control idea along with Rage Powder, okay, and its hospitality ability. So even though it does have this Grass Ghost typing, making it weak to Astro Barrage and ice attacks, you know, from something like Glacial Lance or Ice Spinner from Chenpao, or even Sucker Punch and Dark Pulse from Heat Wave, from Chi-Yus and Chenpaos, like we said earlier, you can still be a pretty useful asset on, you know, this Miraidon Terapagos kind of team. So when you have Trick Room, Rage Powder, Okay, and then even something like Matcha Gotcha here, that's Magical Leaf, oops. Matcha Gotcha, or even Strength Sap, right? Where you just have these abilities to not only provide redirection support and speed control, but you have ways to mitigate damage and inflict status, you know, with Strength Sap and Matcha Gotcha. So, again, when you can heal your Terapagos, you can keep it healthy, keep its Terra Shield active, and then just keep alternating these Calm Minds. So this way the Pagos becomes unbreakable. And now what you end up doing here when you combo it well with Miraidon is if you have Volt Switch on Miraidon, you can pivot out Miraidon and reset terrain if they want to reset it against you. Bring in Sinistcha, get some healing, and you know, for your partner Pokemon. In this case, it could be a Terapagos, especially with the Electric Seed going. Now you're getting, you know, this defensive boost combined with this special defense boost, and now you're adding healing with the Sinistcha, and now all of a sudden the Pagos becomes hard to break here. And again, with the speed control here, Pagos, you know, is somewhat relatively slow. You can take advantage of the Trick Room and potentially resweep stuff like other Miraidon teams and Shadow Rider teams. And also with Rage Powder, you free yourself from the fear of close combat from Urshifu, as well as Body Press from Zamazenta, because again, you are a Ghost type clicking Rage Powder, so the fighting moves just gets redirected here. So a couple of teams that, you know, take good advantage of the Sinistcha. Again, we did a team building video of this, and this is the exact same team that you can utilize. If you want the EV spreads, you can go to our channel and scroll back a few videos. You can see some of the variations that we put out with Sinistcha here. But again, look at this: Shadow Ball, Rage Powder, Protect, and Trick Room. So usually these Sinistchas are just going to run Sash just because they're so vulnerable to, you know, Fire, Dark, and Ghost type attacks running around. So this is the best way to utilize that. So with the Trick Room here, you have speed control, you have the slow mode, you have the redirection support to set up this Calm Mind, and then the Miraidon here can always just pivot in and out, and you can reuse the Sinistcha here, and then Incineroar also same thing, you know, with Parting Shot and U-Turn from Urshifu as well. So lots of pivot ideas here that you can always just reposition the board and really take advantage of Sinistcha's hospitality just to, you know, well, utilize its healing to the best of its ability. There's another one here from Guillermo Castilla, right? He also used the Sinistcha here with Miraidon, but not with Terapagos, but instead with Ho-Oh. And now with Ho-Oh, again, it has Regenerator, just like a Moongus. And that means when you pivot out Ho-Oh and bring it back in, it gets health. And you can do that with Sinistcha. So now all of a sudden, when you switch out Ho-Oh, switch in Sinistcha, Ho-Oh in the back recovers health. Sinistcha comes in, heals the partner Pokemon, whatever it may be. And, you know, good synergy on that end. And then at the same time, you know, with Ho-Oh being weak to water and electric attacks, the Sinistcha can redirect all of that because, again, you do have the grass typing on your side. And look at this type of thing. You have Tailwind and Trick Room on your side. So lots of forms of speed control here. So this is pretty cool when you think about it. So either way, you could use this with Miraidon Ho-Oh or Miraidon Terapagos. But I do think Sinistcha is a little bit underrated. Again, it is relatively niche. It's usually, you know, with those two restricted pairings. But because of that, it can do its job relatively well and just be rather annoying to get rid of, especially if it has that Focus Sash. All right, we're getting close to the end of our list here. And Annihilape is something that I also wanted to preview here because back in Regulation H, this was another behemoth in that format. The same like, you know, Sneasler and Dragonite that we talked about earlier. But back then, it was just more or less a setup mon with Bulk Up and Rage Fist and Close Combats, right? And, you know, you partnered it with Mouse Hold. But nowadays, it's usually just this Choice Scarf bot that could either go for the Deadly Final Gambit and or the coaching plays into the Calyrex Ice Rider. Now, if you notice, I do have a specific EV spread here with the Annihilape, and that's 172 investment in the HP. That gets it to 207. Why is that important? Because that is what you need at minimum to take out something like a Miraidon or a Koraidon, because they are a base speed 100 mon. If they go max HP 252, they'll cap at 207, and that's where Annihilape can just immediately remove the Miraidon and or the Koraidon right off the bat, and you know, you don't have to worry about another restricted, right? Or in this case, like we said earlier, you're just a fast coaching user into your own Calyrex. And what's really cool with Annihilape doing that is you are a ghost type, which means you can't get faked out, right? And if they want to bring Incineroar against your Calyrex that is just running a Leech Seed leftover set, yes, your Calyrex will be vulnerable to Intimidate, but if they do that, now your Annihilape gets the Defiant boost, and now all of a sudden you can pressure the Incineroars right back with something like a Close Combat or force them to Terra when they don't want to have to Terra immediately with that Incineroar there. So you have some ideas there. And of course, at the same time, you do have Rage Fist, and that will, of course, with the Scarf, let you outspeed a Shadow Rider. You could just nuke it immediately, force that to Terra if it hasn't done so already. So lots of different things you can do with this ape, and it again all relies on this Scarf and this Define ability. But a couple of teams that you can utilize this set is something like this. So we got to see this from Carson Confer, of course, the winning Smogon Tour with Miraidon, Calyrex, Ice Rider, like we showed you earlier. It is that Choice Scarf set here. You know, with Close Combat, Rage Fist, Final Gambit, and Coaching, you can boost your Calyrex behind screens and behind Intimidate. You know, with Incineroar, the Calyrex just becomes hard to remove because not only are you reducing damage with screens and Intimidate and Parting Shot, but you're boosting your own bulk with the coaching plays from Annihilape there. So I like that a lot. Then you have something like this. Again, similar idea, again, with the Scarf Annihilape, Miraidon, Calyrex team with Incin. Same concept, same idea, just a couple of different supporting partners. How about this one from Giotes' Spirit Pillar tournament? So they've been using this a lot too. Different idea here. Still Choice Scarf, of course, with Coaching and Final Gambit, but now this is with Zamazenta and Kyogre here. So you, if anything, you can actually boost your Zamazenta's bulk here and go for harder hitting body presses. So that's an idea. Otherwise, again, a pretty decent partner with Roaring Moon. If you want to bring Incin to intimidate the Chien-Pao and the Roaring Moon, all of a sudden the Annihilape makes you think twice about that because, again, you're just going to give it a boost with Defiant, and now it's also super fast, so it's going to do a lot of damage with that speed boost. And seldomly, you can also coach your Kyogre because it has a pretty good special defense bulk. Even though it doesn't need the attack, the physical bulk that it could get will let it survive stuff like Rillaboom, Wood Hammers, or even Grassy Glides if it's already been shipped there. So you have that play available to you. But again, Annihilape, you know, it's a very niche idea that you can put with these Calyrex teams. But again, it can work just because you have to play the gamble game with the 50-50. Is he going to click Final Gambit? Is he going to click Coaching, right? Or is he just going to straight up attack with something like Close Combat and maybe put things in range for a Glacial Lance, or maybe put it range, you know, for something like a Miraidon Electro Drift. You have to play those mind games, and that's the advantage that Annihilape can give you in Regulation I. So this is also why some teams have been able to be very successful, like Carson Confer, and win some of these grassroots tournaments. All right, the last one on our list here, we are going to mention Iron Bundle. And if you've been following the channel throughout our Regulation I videos, you know that we're relatively high on the bundle usually just because of that speed stat, 136. Now, why might you ask, is that a big deal? Let me put a couple Pokemon on the board for you. Let's put Flutter Mane over here. Let's put Miraidon over here as well. I think those two are pretty good examples. So what do you notice about Flutter Mane and Miraidon here? They both have a speed stat of 135, right? And usually, if the Flutter Mane is not Sash, it's always going to have a booster energy, right? Usually, this will be something like Speed. And Miraidons, a lot of them are also starting to run the Choice Scarf idea, right? Which is great. So all of these are essentially +1 boosts, more or less, right? But guess what? Iron Bundle is 136. So by default, Iron Bundle can outspeed both the Miraidon and the Flutter Mane, which is important, right? Because again, that means you have the faster speed control. And in this case, that is an Icy Wind. Okay, so what this means, you can be max speed and then you get to outspeed. Let's say you have a Miraidon on your team, or if you have booster energy on your side, for example, that means you're going to win the Speed Wars, right? You're going to have the faster Icy Wind. They're going to get -1. Then your partner threat can outspeed their Flutter Manes and their Miraidons, for example. So that's why I like Bundle here. And it's also a fast Encore user that's not Prankster, right? And that's good because, again, that's very useful against the Indeedee teams, the Ferrograph stuff, if you're a non-Prankster and you're fast. So this way you can really take advantage. You also have access to Ice Beam in general if you don't want the Freeze Dry. This has higher base power, which means you get to pick up more KOs than Freeze Dry, because Freeze Dry, even though it's lower accuracy, it does give you that chance to freeze, and it does give you a chance to hit the Urshifu's, right? But if you're on the same team as Miraidon, you don't really care about doing that anyway. You just rather have the damage, so this is why Ice Beam is just used a little bit more. And then sometimes maybe you'll just have Hydro Pump here if you're feeling adventurous, right? But anyway, the real secret with Bundle is that speed stat of 136 and also having access to Icy Wind. That's really a key factor there. And if you look at, again, Mr. Nielsen's team, you know, who's used 3 of the niche mons that we have in today's video, Bundle does have that Icy Wind play with Miraidon here. So because you have the Miraidon on your side, you don't necessarily need the boost energy. You can rely on the Core Drive activating anyway, and then just having your Focus Sash is just going to be a little bit more important. How about Brian Fournier's team here, right? With Groudon and Miraidon, something that we've used on the channel before as well. Look at this one. Again, Icy Wind with that Sash, and you have Ice Beam, right? Stronger base power than Freeze Dry. And then you also have U-Turn here, which is pretty cool because, again, you can pivot out Miraidon or Heart Switch it, then click U-Turn on Iron Bundle, bring in Miraidon back into the same turn, right? But just on a different slot, which is really useful if you want to reset terrain potentially. Ben's team here from NAIC, and this is also a pretty cool take with Miraidon and Iron Bundle. Again, with Encore support. This is Iron Moth and Calyrex Shadow Rider. Very interesting, but again, Iron Moth also sometimes sees a little bit of play, especially for teams that want to be played on ladder. But again, same concept. Again, Bundle being a really, really fast speed control mon that can also Encore with, you know, that isn't Prankster, which is, again, very, very much coveted there. So, yeah, again, if you're trying to use Miraidon, definitely give it a go with Iron Bundle. You'll definitely be pleased with the speed control it can provide. And if you already have Fergraph, you don't really need Whimsicott if you're really going to utilize the Iron Bundle in this sense, right? So I like that concept, so definitely give that a go. But yeah, what I want to do now that we've given you like a decent set of 10 underrated mons, there's still some Pokemon that I was thinking about that didn't quite make the original list, but we'll call it the honorable mention, right? So let's take a those. All right, so here I have a list of honorable mention here. I have 6 Pokemon here. Again, these could easily be in the 10 that we mentioned earlier, but I gave a little bit more premises to those. But let's look at Entei here. You know, again, I'll just run through these. I won't like go full in depth here, but I'll just make some notable mentions here. Inner Focus, which means, again, no Intimidate, no Fake Out, just like a Dragonite here. And now you have Sacred Fire at your disposal that you don't have to commit a whole restricted slot to. Your base speed 100 mon. You have ideas there to put it with Koraidon and or Groudon. You do have also access to extreme speed as well as Terra Normal, so this way you can do a little bit more damage. You can also go for Snarl, which makes you a pretty decent support option if you want to do it like that. But overall, like, I think Entei is a pretty good fire type that can definitely be utilized with something like Zamazenta and Chien-Pao like it has in the past. Tinglu is also pretty cool here. Again, dark ground typing with the ground coverage, really good against Miraidon and stuff like Iron Hands, for example. You do have to watch out for the Fairy and the Fighting Move coverage that they both have. At the same time, you can also put pressure on the Shadow Rider and Lunala teams. You do have access to Runation and Sand Tomb, which means you can chip and break Sash and then, you know, break Shadow Shield for that matter. And then you also have access to stuff like whatchamacallit, the other dark move that I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, Lash Out, that's another one that it can do. And then Rocky Helmet makes it so that you do a little bit even more damage. It's super bulky, right? So combos also well with Zamazenta because, again, Zamazenta has that physical boost already, you know, from its ability, but now you can reduce special attack damage when you combo with Tinglu. So pretty good there. Clefairy, again, you know what this thing can do. It has had more reliance in previous formats, and, you know, more people are doing other things now with that slot, adding Smeargle instead. But, you know, there are teams that can use both, and I've seen a little bit more Clefairy usage now than I did in the previous months here, because, again, Frangard is busted. You have access to Follow Me. You also have access to After You, and look at your speed, base speed 35. That makes you faster than Ice Rider in Trick Room. So, you know, even though you may not have a Trick Room threat, if you have your own Calyrex, you go for After You. Now your Calyrex Shadow Rider can outspeed their Ice Rider in Trick Room, which is kind of funny when you think about it. It'll help you set up, right, with Nasty Plot, right? And then you're adding bulk here with Friendguard. So it's always been a pretty good partner with the Shadow Rider teams. Iron Valiant, also pretty good with some Miraidon teams, especially when you have base 116 speed. You do have access to Spirit Break, Close Combat, and even Wide Guard, and also Coaching. So you can always utilize something like this on those Miraidon, Calyrex, Ice Rider teams, where now you have a Wide Guard user that you don't have to commit a restricted slot to, so you don't have to commit Lunala or Zamazenta with your Miraidon. You can use Iron Valiant instead. that means you can use something like Ice Rider, and now all of a sudden you can go for coaching onto that Ice Rider. And if you also really wanted to, you can even add Trick Room onto your Valiant, and now all of a sudden you have a niche Trick Room user on that type of team as well. So I think that's also a pretty cool rule there. Ditto, of course, you just saw it. It also has been pretty dominant on dual restricted teams, just because you get to copy your restricted, but you do have to position it properly. Otherwise, it is a little bit of a drawback. So, the sound of copying a free legendary sounds great. You just have to make sure you're in the right spot. And then Dondozo over here, believe it or not. So why would Dondozo ever be underrated? Well, have you really seen a whole lot of Dondozo usage? Not much, right? That's because, again, there's more damage being able to be pushed out in a restricted format. So Dondozo's damage output isn't as nearly as good as, let's say, a Miraidon, for example. But at the end of the day, okay, you can still use Dondozo Tatsugiri with some Calyrex teams. There's not a whole lot of checks right now for Dondozo. Like I've been saying, there's no Haze user, there's no Clear Smog Amoonguss. So the teams that have been able to utilize Dondozo have done relatively well. And then it's just all about this order up body press set, okay, with leftovers. Okay, so then, you're just racking up all of this defense and then just going for these big body presses. And they can't really break you, especially when you have leftovers, right, along with Protect. So I do like the damage output that Dondozo can do. And you don't really care about Intimidate anyway, because, again, you're just using body press. So I think this is pretty cool. And then you can add something like a spread move here with Earthquake if you really wanted to. Otherwise, this is always just going to be Wave Crash as your other stab move here. But I do think Dondozo teams can take advantage of the opponent not running any checks to it. And because of that, I think it can be a big player going into the World Championships here. All right, so that's it. Let me know what you thought of the 10 that we put out in today's video. And let me know what you think of these 6 honorable mentions. Should they have been put into the 10 that we put out in the original section of the video? But yeah, hopefully this inspires you to try a little bit more options in your team building as we head into the last month of Regulation I, or as we get closer to Worlds. Hopefully we gave you some ideas. But yeah, if you're still interested in trying out some specific Pokemon, not really sure how to go about it, just comment below and hopefully we can answer you. Or if you are interested in coaching, right, and you need a little bit of help team building, make sure you sign up for coaching on the channel. Tier 3 sub gets you a one-on-one coaching session with me where we get to build the team from scratch, hash out all the EVs from scratch, and then you get to test the team out and then come back with feedback, and then we can make adjustments as always. Otherwise, also Tier 4 gets you everything Tier 3 gives you, which is, again, that coaching session. And now at the same time, you have access where I can give you feedback on your battling. So this way now, not only can we help you improve from a team building aspect, but now we can also help you improve as a battler as well. All right, so check those out. Video description will have the links for our tier subs, so take a look at that, as well as in the comment section. We'll pin the comment as we do in every single video where you have access to coaching as well. All right, but that's it for now, folks. We'll be back with another video in the next one. Peace out and have a good one.